For nearly 2 decades, Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman have been one of Hollywood's most beloved couples, a rare example of glamour and grace that seemed untouched by the chaos of fame. To the outside world, their marriage was a fairy tale. Two Australian icons who found love at the height of their careers, raising daughters in a world of flashing cameras and endless gossip. But behind those radiant smiles and red carpet embraces, something far more complex was brewing. Now at 57, Keith Urban is finally speaking out, and what he's revealing about his marriage to Nicole Kidman has left fans stunned. The country superstar, known for his emotional honesty through song, has opened up about the struggles that nearly tore them apart, the addictions, the distance, and the quiet moments of doubt that few ever saw. For years, tabloids painted their story as a perfect union, a golden couple who had it all. But in reality, Keith's demons almost cost him everything, including the woman he loved most. And it wasn't fame, fortune, or success that saved their marriage. It was something far deeper, rooted in forgiveness, patience, and a love that refused to die, even when it seemed impossible to hold on to. This is the truth Keith Urban has finally chosen to share. The story of redemption, vulnerability, and the unwavering strength of Nicole Kidman, who refused to give up on the man behind the music. When Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman met in 2005, it seemed like destiny. Two Australian stars, both admired for their talent and humility, crossing paths in Hollywood at a time when both needed something real. Keith, already an acclaimed country musician, was at the height of his fame. His albums climbing the charts, his charisma lighting up every stage. Nicole, fresh from the emotional aftermath of her divorce from Tom Cruise, was rebuilding her life, searching for peace beyond the glare of the spotlight. Their first encounter was electric. Nicole once said she felt an instant connection, something deep, genuine, and almost spiritual. "I remember thinking, this man is unlike anyone I've ever met," she later admitted. For Keith, the moment was equally powerful. Beneath his rock star confidence, there was a vulnerability that only Nicole seemed to understand. A whirlwind romance followed. Within a year, they were married in a quiet ceremony in Sydney, surrounded by friends and family. The wedding was filled with tears, laughter, and heartfelt music. To the public, it was a match made in heaven, two soulmates who had finally found each other. But hidden beneath the surface was a truth that few could see. Keith had long been battling inner demons, years of substance abuse that he had managed to keep mostly private. The pressures of fame, long tours, and the loneliness of the road had taken a toll. While Nicole radiated calm and grace, Keith was wrestling with chaos. At first, he tried to hide it, afraid of losing her. But addiction has a way of showing itself, no matter how hard one tries to conceal it. Just months after their wedding, Nicole was faced with a heartbreaking reality. Keith's struggles had reached a breaking point. While most newlyweds were celebrating their honeymoon phase, Nicole found herself making one of the hardest decisions of her life, convincing her husband to seek help before it was too late. In late 2006, Keith entered rehab for the third time, and Nicole stood by him every step of the way. She canceled filming commitments, choosing instead to focus on his recovery. Many in Hollywood whispered that their marriage wouldn't survive, but Nicole refused to walk away. "We've all got our battles," she later said in an interview, "and when you love someone, you fight alongside them." Keith's admission to rehab just months into their marriage shocked fans and the media alike. Yet, in that difficult moment, their love began to transform. What started as a fairy tale quickly became a story of resilience. Keith would later reveal that Nicole's love was his turning point, saying, "I was at my lowest, but she never gave up on me. That's when I realized I had to change. Not for my career, not for fame, but for her." Behind the scenes, Nicole wrote letters to him every day during his treatment, encouraging him to stay strong. Her unwavering belief became his anchor, pulling him back from the edge. When Keith returned home, sober and more determined than ever, he promised that he would never let her down again. Their relationship had been tested early, but it was forged in fire. While most celebrity marriages crumble under far less, theirs emerged stronger. Not perfect, but real. The couple rarely spoke publicly about that time, preferring to let their actions speak for them. But those close to them knew Nicole's quiet strength had saved Keith's life. As Keith later said in a candid interview, "When the world saw me smiling on stage, Nicole saw the parts of me that were breaking, and she loved me anyway." It was a love story that no one saw coming. One that wasn't built on fame or fantasy, but on redemption, healing, and the kind of devotion that only grows stronger when it's been tested by pain. While the public saw Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman as a golden couple, smiling on red carpets, holding hands at award shows and posing for magazine covers, the truth was far more complicated. Behind those radiant smiles, the couple was navigating some of the hardest years of their lives. Keith's recovery was not a straight path. Rehab had helped him regain control, but the road to sobriety is rarely easy. The music industry, with its endless travel, late nights, and constant pressure, tested his resolve daily. And although Nicole was his greatest supporter, she was also carrying her own emotional burdens, balancing her career, motherhood, and the fear that Keith might relapse at any moment. Nicole had experienced heartbreak before. Her divorce from Tom Cruise had left her guarded, and now she was watching another man she loved teeter on the edge of self-destruction. Yet, unlike before, she refused to let fear dictate her life. "I knew Keith's heart," she once said, "and I knew he wanted to be better. I just needed to help him find the way." Keith's honesty about his struggles became both his weakness and his strength. He poured his emotions into his music, transforming his pain into lyrics that resonated deeply with fans. Songs like "Once in a Lifetime" and "Making Memories of Us" reflected his gratitude and love for Nicole, tributes to the woman who stood by him when the rest of the world turned away. Each performance became a form of therapy, a way of saying thank you without words. But fame brought its own set of challenges. The media continued to dissect their every move, questioning their marriage and speculating about Keith's sobriety. Tabloids exaggerated stories of tension, turning ordinary disagreements into dramatic headlines. Nicole, who had spent years learning to ignore the noise, did her best to shield Keith from the constant scrutiny. "We've learned to keep our world small," she once told a friend. "The rest doesn't matter." Still, Keith often felt the pressure of living up to his image, the reformed husband, the dedicated father, the clean living star. Some nights, when he returned home from touring, the exhaustion hit hard. But instead of turning to old habits, he turned to Nicole. She became his safe space, the person who reminded him that he didn't have to be perfect, just honest. In interviews, Keith later admitted that he had spent years trying to prove himself worthy of her. "Nicole is so strong, so pure," he said. "There were times I felt I didn't deserve her love. But she kept telling me that love isn't earned. It's chosen. And she chose me." Nicole's influence changed Keith in profound ways. She encouraged him to meditate, focus on family, and reconnect with his spirituality. Together, they built a life away from Hollywood's chaos, often retreating to their home in Nashville, where they could live quietly with their daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret. It was a different kind of fame, one grounded in peace and gratitude rather than red carpets and applause. Still, not every day was easy. There were moments of doubt, frustration, and fear. Nicole once confessed that she prayed constantly during those years, not for fame or success, but for stability. "I just wanted our home to be calm," she said. "I wanted Keith to feel safe." And in time, that calm began to take root. Keith's dedication to sobriety strengthened, and his music flourished. He began mentoring younger artists, using his own story as a message of hope. Nicole, too, continued to thrive, earning critical acclaim for her acting while remaining deeply devoted to her family. Their struggles, once a source of pain, became the glue that bound them together. Keith's darkness had once threatened to consume him, but Nicole's unwavering light kept pulling him back. Together, they learned that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, even on the hardest days. By the time Keith turned 50, he wasn't just a survivor. He was a man transformed. And behind that transformation was a woman who believed in him when few others did. As the years went by, Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman's marriage evolved into something much deeper than even they could have imagined. What had begun as a whirlwind romance, tested by addiction and pain, slowly became a partnership rooted in honesty, forgiveness, and faith. For Keith, every day of sobriety was a gift, and every quiet morning spent with Nicole and their daughters was a reminder of how close he had come to losing it all. In interviews, Keith began opening up more about his journey, not for attention, but in hopes of helping others who were facing the same battles. "Sobriety doesn't mean life gets easy," he shared. "It means you finally have the strength to face life as it is." He credited Nicole with giving him that strength, saying, "She saw the man I could be when I couldn't see him myself." Nicole, meanwhile, found peace in their new rhythm. Gone were the days of chaotic film schedules and constant travel. Together, they created a balance that kept their family grounded. They cooked dinners at home, played music together, and made a point to attend church as a family whenever possible. To outsiders, it might have seemed simple, even ordinary. But for two people who had spent their lives in the spotlight, it was the kind of peace they had longed for, their daughters. Sunday and faith became the center of that peace. Nicole often spoke about how motherhood gave her perspective, and how Keith's commitment to his family made her fall in love with him all over again. "When I watch him with the girls," she once said, "I see the man I always believed he could become." But Keith's journey toward redemption wasn't just about staying sober. It was about learning to forgive himself. For years, he carried guilt over the pain his addiction caused Nicole, and there were nights when those memories still haunted him. But Nicole never used his past against him. Instead, she encouraged him to transform that pain into purpose. That purpose began to shine through in his music. Keith's albums during this period, Ripcord, Graffiti You, and The Speed of Now, reflected not just love and gratitude, but also deep introspection. The lyrics were full of life lessons, reminders of resilience, and the beauty of second chances. In one touching tribute, he even dedicated a song to Nicole, describing her as the calm in my storm. Their relationship also became a quiet example of what love could look like when fame wasn't the focus. While other celebrity couples crumbled under the pressure of constant exposure, Keith and Nicole thrived by maintaining their privacy. They rarely attended Hollywood parties, preferring to spend time with family or close friends. And when they did appear together publicly, their affection was genuine, not performative. In one emotional moment during a concert in 2022, Keith paused mid-song to speak about Nicole. "I don't talk about her enough," he told the crowd. "But the truth is, everything I am, every song, every success, comes from her love and her belief in me. She saved my life and she made me a better man." The audience erupted in applause, some even moved to tears. It wasn't just a romantic gesture. It was a rare glimpse into the heart of a man who had finally found peace. Nicole, too, has often reflected on the journey. In an interview, she said, "Marriage isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other again and again. There were moments we could have walked away, but we didn't. And that's why we're here." Their love story, once shadowed by addiction and fear, became a testament to endurance. They showed that healing doesn't happen overnight. It happens one choice, one apology, and one act of grace at a time. By the time Keith entered his late 50s, he wasn't just a husband and father. He was a man at peace with his past and proud of his present. And the woman who once picked him up from the darkest corners of his life remained right by his side, still holding his hand, still believing in the man he had become. At 57, Keith Urban finally decided it was time to tell the world the truth about his marriage to Nicole Kidman. Not the Hollywood version that fans and magazines had painted for years, but the raw, unfiltered story that only the two of them truly knew. During a deeply emotional interview, Keith looked back on his journey, from addiction and fear to love, forgiveness, and redemption, and spoke words that silenced the room. He began by saying, "People always ask me how Nicole and I make it work. The truth is, we don't always. We've had to fight for it, every single day. But she never stopped believing in me, even when I stopped believing in myself. His honesty caught many off guard. For years, the world had seen only the glamorous photos and romantic red carpet moments. Now Keith was peeling back the curtain to show the reality of their life together. One that was filled with challenges, tears, and triumphs. He admitted that early in their marriage, he felt undeserving of Nicole's love. I was ashamed, he confessed. Here I was, this guy who couldn't stay sober, who kept making the same mistakes. And she's this incredible woman, a strong, steady, full of grace. I thought she'd walk away, but she didn't. She loved me through it. That love, Keith said, became the foundation of everything that followed. It wasn't just romantic love. It was the kind of love that demands truth, accountability, and growth. There were nights I'd wake up terrified I'd ruin everything again, he continued. But Nicole would take my hand and say, "You're home. You're safe. We're okay." And that's all I needed to hear. For Nicole, the journey had its own trials. In a rare comment, she said, "Keith's strength is his honesty. He doesn't hide from who he's been. And that's what makes him who he is today." Over time, they learned to embrace the imperfections of their marriage rather than run from them. Keith said it best. We stopped chasing perfection and started choosing peace. The interview also revealed something even deeper. Keith's acknowledgement that fame had once blinded him. You get caught up in the noise, he admitted. People tell you you're amazing, that you're special. But it doesn't mean anything if the people who love you can't recognize you anymore. Nicole brought me back to what matters: love, family, purpose. He spoke with pride about his daughters, Sunday and Faith, saying they were the true reflection of their love story. When I look at them, he said, I see Nicole's heart and my hope. They're growing up knowing that marriage isn't a fairy tale. It's hard work, forgiveness, and showing up, even when it's tough. Keith's words resonated deeply because they weren't polished or rehearsed. They came from a man who had lived through the storms and come out stronger. He didn't shy away from his regrets. Instead, he used them as lessons. If I could tell my younger self one thing, he said, it would be this. Don't be afraid to need someone. Love doesn't make you weak. It saves you. By the end of the interview, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Fans across the world flooded social media with messages of love and admiration. They weren't just praising Keith Urban, the country star. They were celebrating Keith Urban, the man who had finally found peace. In his closing remarks, Keith smiled softly and said, Nicole and I, we've been through the fire, but we came out the other side still holding hands. That's the truth I wanted to share, not the fairy tale, the fight, the faith, and the forgiveness that made it real. And as he looked toward the future, Keith made one final promise, to continue honoring the love that had saved his life. Every song I write now, he said, is a thank you note to her, for seeing the man behind the mistakes, for believing in me when I didn't, and for teaching me what love truly means. In that single moment, the world didn't just see a superstar. They saw a husband, a father, and a man who had finally made peace with his past because of the woman who never stopped believing in his future.